Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, we're talking about making more money on your money, right? So what have we covered so far? We've talked about how the S&P outperforms the average investor and 96% of equity mutual funds out there, right? So, and we showed some of the myths, right? Some of the ways that this happens. One of them is market timing. Another is a lot of turnover, trading, stock picking, trying to figure out ways to beat the market when it fails, and yet it also runs up costs, so you get a double whammy there. The market itself is giving a better return than what that active manager picking is doing. So when they look at the average mutual fund investor, one of the reasons they're not doing as well is because of these things. So again, what is it? Market timing. You want to avoid that. Stock picking. Okay, no, it's buy the whole market. Okay, how do you do that? I'm going to show you. Cost, very important to keep costs down. So not only turnover rates, that's just why a properly constructed portfolio is automatically going to minimize trading. Okay, you're not going to have this turnover going on of stocks and bonds, except in one instance called rebalancing, and that's going to be of a benefit to you, and I'll show you how that works. All right, so here's some things we're going over then with the portfolios. The other with stock picking, market timing, keeping your costs low. The fees in these mutual funds. Some of them are like what we'll refer to as retail type funds versus wholesale funds. In other words, they have sales loads. You may be paying 4 or 5% or more, okay, up front when you invest. So you invest $100,000 and there goes over $5,000 of your money up front in a sales load. Then you've got internal fees, management fees, what are called 12B1 fees, marketing fees, you name it, that are built into the mutual fund as well. And it depends on the fund as to how much those fees may be. Do you know what the fees in your mutual funds are? Okay, even in your 401k, there are, of course, fees, and they have to disclose these now. If you don't know them, you need to be asking about these. This is very important. This is affecting your performance. And the active manage. If you're in actively managed funds and you're thinking you're allocated okay, but the fund managers aren't maintaining your discipline, it can create problems for you. So how do you get around that? All right, biggest determinant. What is the biggest determinant of what we're going to get to the truth here? What is the biggest determinant of your returns? Okay, what is the most important thing when it comes to constructing a portfolio? This is for your 401ks, 403bs, 457s, your thrift savings plan. Don't be jumping around between the G fund and the C fund and trying to figure out whether you should have that F fund. No, it's all of them. It's figuring out what the mix put together it needs to be. And that's the same within your 401ks. What's the asset allocation? So let's take a look at slide number 7, in fact. The biggest determinant of portfolio performance, all right? And that's almost 92% of the determining factor is going to be asset allocation. All right, not stock picking, not market timing, not other factors. So we can get slide 7 up there, that pie chart. And this shows it, and this again, this is research, right? This isn't something I'm throwing off the top of my head. This comes from Determinants of Portfolio Performance. This is a financial analysis journal that was put out in the research and studies that go into this. We're talking about from Nobel Prize winners like Dr. Markowitz and Dr. Fama and the work that they've done showing the importance, in fact, of asset allocation. All right, that is going to be the biggest thing. So if that's the biggest thing, how do you do that? Well, let's take a look at the next slide. This is slide number 8. One very important factor, and Dr. Eugene Fama, who won the, going back actually to Dr. Markowitz, Harry Markowitz, who won the Nobel Prize back in 1990, one of the ways he did that was through developing what's known as the Markowitz efficient frontier. And one of the things that he determined in his research that won him the Nobel Prize was you want to blend together in your portfolio asset categories that have a negative correlation. So by doing that, when one's up, the other's down is what that means. That's going to smooth out volatility, the ups and downs, and give you a better result. So let's take a look at the next one, Markowitz efficient frontier, in fact. This is what that looks like. So on this chart, follow with me if you will. To your left, screen left there, if you look, the bar that goes up is given the annualized return. So you can see right around, say, 10%. If you go across then to your right, you'll see the S&P 500 index is right around, over the last, again, approximately 40 years, average around 10%, 11% over that period. But now if you go down to the bottom line, you see that those numbers across the bottom of the graph, that's the volatility, that's the measure of risk. Do you know what the risk measure in your portfolio is? This is the thing that can create real problems for you, especially when you're getting near retirement or heading into retirement or taking money from your portfolios. This could be the difference of running out of money and never running out of money, is understanding this one principle alone. Now, with Markowitz, what Dr. Markowitz found, if you go across to the screen right about in the middle there, you see that moderate portfolio, and it's earning about the same amount of money, right? It's the same return as the S&P 500 index, but if we look, it's like with half the risk, half the volatility. Wouldn't that make it a lot easier to not get so nervous, to have a little bit of peace of mind in your portfolio if you could reduce the volatility down dramatically? That's one of the most important factors. So that's Dr. Markowitz's work, and I'm going to show you, in fact, some of the results with these portfolios over time. So when we're talking about ways that you can earn more, so we can get rid of that slide right now. One of the ways that you can do that, as you can see, has to do with asset allocation. Which asset categories do you want in your portfolio? How do you construct the portfolio? So why don't we go ahead and get rid of the Markowitz Efficient Frontier slide. And here's one of the things that comes into play. Active managers, when they're not looking at it in the same way, okay, or they're thinking they can beat the market, and they're also thinking they can probably reduce volatility. In other words, when you're talking to an advisor, through any of the broker-dealers out there, it doesn't really matter, that believes in the same way, okay, that active, it basically has to do with their belief, okay, that active management does in fact work. They think that these money managers are smarter, right? And that's what we are all thinking initially. When I first got my securities license many years ago, that's how I was trained. I was trained to believe that my broker-dealer was going to provide me with everything I needed, that they had all the research and the smartest guys in the world out there doing this kind of research that's going to show me the best mutual funds, the best investments for my clients. And I was so disappointed to find that I would go out and you know, show these to my clients and help them invest, and then they would underperform the market. And I couldn't understand why that would happen. And then I decided I'm going to get some software and I'm going to develop my own portfolios, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at the top, only the top 10% of different asset categories, those mutual funds over the last 1, 3, 5, 10 years that have the best results, and those are what we'll put together in our portfolio, and now we'll be able to beat the market. And what happened? It didn't work. It underperformed the market going forward, and I'm thinking, how could that happen? It did so well. These were the top 10%, and now they're underperforming the market. And the reason is simply that they just happen to get lucky, right? There's the skill, the crystal ball doesn't exist. All right? The few unicorns, we'll call them, in the world that maybe do exceptional as far as investment returns are very wealthy guys. And the guys that help others do that, in fact, you're talking, to put in perspective, Tony Robbins in his book Money Matters interviewed a number of these guys, and one of the things that he found is you'd need about $100 million to even be able to invest with them. Okay? So we're talking huge investors. These are the unicorns. We're not going to have access to these kind of people, right? So what do they, but then Tony asked him, he says, well, what would you recommend to a family member or a close family friend if they asked you, they don't have $100 million, they're just, the regular Joe that sat there like all of us working and trying to, get ahead. What would you recommend to them? And they said index funds. All right, they're talking about blending together asset categories to build a portfolio. That would be what they would recommend to them. It's called passive management, is another term. All right, so that's what we're talking about, and that's what Dr. Markowitz talked about in his research. That's what Dr. Eugene Fama, who won the Nobel Prize in 2013 for his research on equities, and he developed, in fact, what was known as the three-factor model. That's what he won on. And the portfolios that we're going to show you, those model portfolios on the graph, the Markowitz Efficient Frontier, those are based on the work of Dr. Fama. okay, utilizing the principles first put out there by Dr. Markowitz. So you got to ask, this is one of the things you might want to know. When new clients come in, one of the things we do is we take a look at their current portfolios and we see where they're at on that efficient frontier. What kind of risk or volatility is built into their current portfolio? What type of returns? Are you getting the return you deserve for the risk you're taking? All right, so, and then we show you this, all right? We show you the numbers on this. We let you see for yourself what's really going on. I don't just ask you to say, oh, here's what, you know, no, we want you to see it, okay? I want to show you. All right, so here's, and that's what we're doing this morning, the same thing. You're seeing the actual, statistics that are out there, the research that's been done, Nobel Prize winning research. There is a better way. All right, now let's talk about the last 15 years. I mentioned the S&P 500 index over the last 15 years averaged about 3% a year. And yet that outperformed most investors who probably got about one third to one half of that over the same period. With inflation at around 3% over that period per year, we got a problem, right? So, but if we blend together, remember that negative, that asset negative correlation chart? So if we blend together, what we find is, and this is Dr. Fama's research, one of the factors is putting together large companies and small companies. Okay, those two together tend to work differently. Another is stocks and bonds. Okay, but now, and I'm going to, a caveat with bonds, and I've talked about this in prior weeks on the show, and I'm going to talk about it a little more because this is so important to understand. Bond funds, again, are not equal. Just like when we're talking about stocks, an actively managed stock, if you buy a large cap actively managed mutual fund rather, and a small cap actively managed mutual fund, they're not necessarily going to give you the same result as if you bought two index such funds or institutional funds where you're buying and capturing those asset categories and they're not going to change. Okay, you don't have to worry about a money manager possibly skewing the result, either A, through changing the asset categories they're in, or B, through the fact that they try to beat the market by buying instead of buying the market, and so they get a less result. All right, their returns are going to be lower and their volatility is going to be higher. So this is going to defeat the whole purpose, and this is how people get set up for failure in these things. So understanding the difference between active and passive management can be huge to you. As I said, over the last 15 years, 3% on the S&P, but on those model portfolios, we're looking at, say, a moderate portfolio average about, that. Remember that chart? It actually averaged about 5% over that same period per year compared to the S&P, okay, with less volatility. In other words, in the down years, it didn't go down as much. Now, granted, on the up years, it doesn't also go up as much, but if we can smooth that out, it's going to give us some peace of mind. And if the end result is we make more money, isn't that what we really want? Okay? Now, here's something else. You've also heard me talk about fixed index annuities on the show. Well, again, you got to be very careful. There's almost 1,000 different annuity products. Okay, over 2/3 of them are variable annuities, and I've told you before, avoid variable annuities. Because what do variable annuities have? They have sub-accounts, and what's in these sub-accounts? Guess what? They're like mutual funds, and mostly actively managed mutual funds. Now I've got the exact things I don't want, and oh yes, in that variable annuity, I've added additional fees, so now my costs have gone up, and I haven't solved anything, have I? I've created an even bigger problem. So that's why if you've got variable annuities, you know, when clients come in and they've got variable annuities, I show them. We'll call the company. We'll get the fees out for them so they can see exactly what they're paying per year, and show them, of course, how this, you know, goes against the what better options, basically, how they can make more with less risk. But we show them the numbers. We don't just, you know, we'll call up the company that they're with and show them exactly how that works. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. I know I'm throwing a lot at you this morning, but I'm really hoping to impress upon you the importance and how you can, in fact, even in these volatile times when the market's doing what, there is a better way to invest. There is a way, in fact, that you can still win this investing game and make more money on your money. All right? Join us here. We're going to be right back on the Retirement Report.